under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of council, please.
Councilmember Garrity? Here. Councilmember Jones?
Here.
Councilmember Olivera? Here. Councilmember Putnam?
Here.
Councilmember Steiger?
Here.
Councilmember Walker?
Here. Do we have any additions to or corrections to the agenda?
Something like that, police coverage.
Police coverage, we will have that last week. Any other additions to the agenda?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Third Avenue. Any other additions or corrections?
I'm gonna talk about it when we get to it.
Okay, then, first item on our agenda is request of a fee waiver for use of city park by the 10th Fraternal Order of Eagle on September 27th.
Gary Oswald and Tammy Black from the Fraternal Order, 10th Fraternal Order at our church there. Okay, their question, okay. Are requesting the waiver of park usage fees for city park for an event to be held on September 27th. The event will be free and open to the public and will include family-friendly events as well as live music and food. The purpose of the event is to help raise money for the club and their charities and to inform people of the Fraternal Order of Eagle. The fundraising will be by donation. And Ms. Oswald and Ms. Black are answering questions.
Council discussion.
Just a question, what kind of charities do you guys support with your fundraising?
Cancer, Heart Fund, diabetes, Mary Bridge Children's Hospital, you name it, we have a whole list.
Other council discussion? What's council's pleasure? Move this forward? All right, let's move this onto the agenda. Right.
There you go.
Next on the agenda, Resolution 2014-196, authorizing an amendment to an interlocal agreement with King County for a 2011 Conservation Features Grant for Pacific Habitat Project.
And Paula is still in the park board meeting, so maybe we need to move down to a couple others. She's trying to finish up that meeting before she can sit down.
Okay, we'll postpone item B. Item C is Planning Commission recommendations on marijuana, which is also Paula.
And D
is Paula on Thursday. So that gets us to E, Resolution 2014-198, authorizing an agreement with Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs for final on-site accreditation assessment.
This is the final contract, which is, I think it's $100 for the contract, and then they charge for staff services, which I'm not sure what that amount is, but it amounts to around $600. And that's a contract that would tie us into the final on-site accreditation inspection.
Council question?
If for some reason we don't pass the inspection, is there a time period or additional application fee for them to come back out?
They allow us whatever time's necessary. I mean, they've already done a free on-site, and they're satisfied that we're in good standing. So, but he did tell me that if there was an issue, he would allow us to rectify it.
So it's not like we have to wait a year?
No, no, it's immediate.
Further council discussion? Council pleasure?
Move forward.
All righty, let's move that onto the agenda. Next up, Agenda Bill 14-154, discussion regarding regarding Pierce County countywide planning policy amendment interlocal agreement from Pierce County Regional Council.
Okay, in June 2014, the Pierce County Council adopted an ordinance, which is on page 147 of the packet, providing their approval of a proposed amendment regarding the establishment of a proposed annexation areas and authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement. As outlined in your packet, beginning on page 143, the proposal refines and adds various policies addressing the annexation of unincorporated urban areas by adjacent cities and towns. The actual amendment begins on page 151 and goes to page 152. In brief, it's establishing potential annexation areas, an unincorporated area within the designated urban growth area with a city or town, or when a city or town has identified as being appropriate for annexation at some point in the future, relabeling urban service areas designated within the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan, and pursuing a more coordinated strategy to encourage annexation of areas within designated urban growth areas. According to the bylaws, there's a 180-day approval process for amendments. Immediate action is not required, and if you desire further research on this issue, it may be brought back to council as late as December 1st workshop with passage of a resolution or ordinance on December 8th, either for or against. Also, you have the option to not take any action, but not taking any action indicates support of the proposed amendment.
Council discussion.
It seems to me like we need to have something from the city planning group, or look at our growth management plans, because we're looking at Pierce County and what exactly do we have, quote unquote, remaining in Pierce County with the city, within the city limits that we look at as future growth, expansion. I mean, it looks to me like what they're asking for is a shared agreement on whatever we plan to do within Pierce County and our city limits. So growth management, it seems on the surface that it's a plausible, step to move forward, but without having Jim or somebody like that, or one of our type of contractual, there he is, or somebody, explaining exactly what's the impact if we don't go along with it. We're going to run into a roadblock if we try to grow in Pierce County.
You could put this on the chat.
We can.
On September 15th, our new community development manager.
Any other council discussion? All right, let's move that on to staff. And next on our agenda, we will go back up to Resolution 2014-196, authorizing an amendment to an interlocal agreement with King County for a 2011 Conservation Futures Grant for Pacific Hatch Habitat Project.
I was going to say I'd speak fast, but I don't think I can speak that fast. This first item here is a fairly simple one. When we first became involved with King County Conservation Futures, we signed an interlocal agreement with King County. And as we work on different projects, as we've been awarded different grants, we have updated or made addendums to this original agreement to encompass the activity. And for some reason, even though this grant was approved by King County back in November of 2010, we've been working with the owners. A new interlocal wasn't sent to us until I was asking where I should send my invoice to. So we're holding up on our invoicing for the project. It's a 50% match. As you can see, there have been pretty substantial outlays, even though they're below the original anticipated expenses. And basically, if we don't sign the interlocal, which has been reviewed by our attorney, then we can't invoice them. If we sign the interlocal, then budget impact will be $61,628.14 in expenses recovered, unless they challenge something that we're submitting for towards this grant. So I think it's a pretty simple, it's boilerplate. They called it a draft, but I was told by our contact at King County that they're not likely to change anything in the interlocal agreement if somebody has a problem with it. So it's pretty simple. And so the motion for consideration would be to approve the signing of 3 copies of the King County interlocal amendment by Mayor Geyer, so an invoice may be submitted by the city for reimbursement of 50% of expenses incurred in making the Hatch property purchase. And of course, the alternative is to not approve the mayor's signature and not get any money back.
Council discussion?
Show me the money.
Already spent the money, we might as well get some back. Council pleasure?
Move forward, Matt.
Moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Next, Planning Commission recommendations on marijuana use ordinance.
This may not be move as quickly as the last one. On August 6th, the Planning Commission had a special meeting and public hearing to review 4 draft ordinances that were supplied by our city attorney. And because they did not have numbers, we had to identify them as A, B, C, and D. The first ordinance, which is labeled A, and you can see in the summary, would allow recreational I-502 production and processing, as a conditional use in the light industrial zone, and I-502 retail stores as a conditional use in commercial zones. Ordinance number B would adopt business licensing requirements for those I-502 marijuana uses. Ordinance C would ban all medical marijuana uses. And Ordinance D would ban all marijuana, both medical and I-502. As you may know, the Planning Commission has met many, many times on the subject and had several hearings. They took testimony from a number of people, and I've attached some handouts that people gave and a list of people who spoke. The Planning Commission was not unanimous in their vote. I guess I should say that, should point out how City Attorney Carol Morris weighed in. She was at the hearing. She briefly reviewed the history of the proposed ordinances and has recommended the city ban all medical marijuana uses because it is not regulated at this time. She also recommended the city allow recreational marijuana uses if the business has obtained licenses from the state of Washington. And Attorney Morris has reviewed this as well. So at the end of the day, after the hearing closed, the Planning Commission had a discussion and did take a rather informal poll, and I won't go any further on that, but ended up dealing with the ordinances one at a time because it was daunting to tackle 4 at the same time. And the votes passed as follows. The Planning Commission recommended approval of Ordinance A, which allows I-502 production and processing as a conditional use in the light industrial zone, and I-502 retail stores as conditional use in commercial zones. By virtue of adopting, or not adopting, recommending approval of A, B follows, because it adopts business licensing requirements for I-502 marijuana uses. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of Ordinance B as well. Ordinance C is worded as a ban on medical marijuana uses, so the wording of the recommendation was difficult, but the Planning Commission recommended to not approve banning medical marijuana uses. D, which is a total ban on all marijuana uses, was difficult to make a recommendation on since they had recommended I-502 and medical. So they're passing it forward to council without a recommendation. I hope that's relatively clear.
Council discussion.
I'm a little mildly disappointed with the Planning Commission and this report. Spent a couple of years on the Planning Commission myself, and the scope of their responsibility. I find the recommendations being returned to us to be inadequate in relationship to their responsibility for zoning issues or in relationship to the businesses. As it stands, I'm not wholeheartedly in favor verbatim with their recommendations. I do think that if we were to move forward with I-502 support, that we should leave everything in the light industrial zone for the immediate future until we determine the long-term impacts. Commercial zoning right now, I think, is a little temperate, and some might not necessarily coincide with some of the future plans that we may have for our commercial areas, and maybe it will fit later on, maybe it won't, I'm not really sure. I just don't want to see the city put itself into a situation where, because of people's opinions, liking or disliking, or what they may think may come along with a business like that, might steer other businesses away from our commercial zones. And it's got to do with my personal opinion about usage or non-usage of marijuana, or what kind of people that might include, draw around. I just don't want other businesses to be making considerations of not coming to our city and moving into what we're going to have in the next couple of years is some pretty open commercial areas that I would like to see this city take full advantage of for our future. So, one, that will be paying taxes and income to the city, and supporting the people that will live here, as well as utilizing those businesses. So, we start being able to use businesses that are in our city instead of go spending our money outside the city. So, unless we're all going to go start buying marijuana, which I don't think we're going to, I'd like to see that as a consideration.
As it reads now, you have, or they have, grouped together production, processing, and retail stores all in one ordinance. Approve ordinance allowing recreational I-502 production and processing as a conditional use in light industrial zone, and I-502 retail stores as a conditional use in commercial zones. I personally believe that those should be separate. Production and processing can be one, but retail another, because retail offers some issues or some items that I have issues with, and so if they're going to be all grouped together, production, processing, and retail stores, I can't accept that. My main concern is
maybe a year or something to see where this thing would sift out, and once the dust settle and find out whether the federal people are gonna be in favor or not in favor. I mean, the whole thing is so up in the air and bouncing around that for a small city like us, we don't have the adequate monies to put forward to the investigation of it, the attorney fees involved, in checking all the gray areas, and also to be able to do the enforcement at this point that the federal or the state would want us to do on this. Is that correct?
Yeah. The intent of my motion at the time was to ban it for the amount of time that the planning commission was discussed based on public comment. And they weren't even presented with that option. It was a flat-out ban in what was presented in their materials, and Ken had to bring it up in the meeting, and there was no discussion. It was brought up, and it was just discounted for the most part, and then their vote progressed. So there was no comment taken on it.
I was at that meeting, and as an audience member, I spoke when the chair took a poll of the audience, and I asked him to separate the production and processing from the retail in his poll, and he was surprised, but I feel, as Katie does, that they should be separated.
Further council discussion?
So I have some thoughts on how to progress from here. And I agree with, this is back in council's lap, back here, and it's here now until we resolve it and work through it. I don't think we're going to get any more work from the planning commission on this subject, so it's now up to council. I am in agreement on separating out the processing versus the retail stores. My understanding, those were two separate when we started, and I'm not sure how it got grouped back together. But, and then having these out, I guess some of my thought process on moving forward with this, because I know council wants to make good, informed decisions, and they want to make thoughtful decisions and really look at this moving forward. And having all four of these in one meeting seems like a whole bunch to digest and tweak and try to work through. Some of my thought is, do we want to like maybe break it up and do a couple of them at a time, separate out these two, tweak it, and see what we want that to look like moving forward? And then do the same with a ban for a temporary time. I mean, just kind of look at what these ordinances would look like moving forward. Because my thoughts are, and this may not be a public or a popular opinion, but I would like to have one more public hearing on this. And what I had done is I was talking with staff that maybe what we can do is the postcard that we sent out for the planning commission seemed to be really effective. It went into everybody's mailbox and it just wasn't a big leeway notice. So what I'd like to do is have a separate flyer that goes in the utility bill talking about a public hearing that would take place towards the end of October or mid-October on a council night. I was told that they would be getting the building ready, I think it was October 1st, and we would be able to put this flyer in with the building, get it out, and maybe council at the next workshop approve a public hearing date for one last public comment. But between now and then, council has the opportunity to work through what these ordinances look like and what will be presented at that time. Take one last public comment at it, look at it again at a couple workshops, and hopefully be moving forward with whatever decision council wants to make by November. And we're within the moratorium timeline, and maybe we can move it off our plate. What are your thoughts on that process?
Honestly, I don't look at anything in my bill. I open it, I look at the number, and I pay it. So I think if we're going to do it, it should be a standalone postcard.
Like what we did last time?
Like what we did last time, with as much information as you can provide. I mean, I know we threw that one together in a day, so with a little bit more time, you could put something together. But I don't think it inserts. I mean, maybe I know.
Well, I'm not
concern I have is like, I got my flyer, on my flyer on my card on Friday.
Well, and we threw it together.
I know, but I'm saying the Friday after.
Oh,
Okay,
right.
so, it didn't,
And the sad part about that is if we plan ahead of time, and that's what I'm talking about, if we do it sometime in October, you know, where we got the planning, here's the other thing that I was told by data bar when we sent out that postcard, there were no guarantees it was gonna be in people's mailboxes because we did it so quick. They wanted a 2-week timeline, you know, to guarantee it's gonna be in people's mailboxes in a timely manner. So I took the risk of trying to, you know, get as much response as I could. So, but by planning it out and trying to figure, you know.
Is there something that stops us from taking a bright colored piece of paper, writing our information on it, and putting it in with the water bill in the same mailing? That way there's no additional cost. You can, I don't know if you have the ability to run off that many photocopies off your photocopier.
They would,
Who's they?
the data bar, when they do the bill, it would be
Oh,
part of
okay.
it.
Yeah, we don't put those in-house.
Right.
That's all, yeah.
Well, you know what? You learn something
Oh,
new.
I'll
Okay,
look.
so, is that a possibility? You could make a flyer and put it on a bright colored piece of paper, and slip it in with the water bill, and then that way it saves postage. I know it's gonna cost.
It still costs us,
And also, when we mailed the card out, I don't think, I didn't get one, and I don't think anybody got one that had a post office box. So, we do something next time, I just wanna bring it up now so I don't forget it, is that we should be sure that, because there are a lot of people,
right, and it was supposed to be included,
well, anyway, it's just, whatever we do,
yeah.
If you wanna do another hearing, I think we should go with another postcard. I'm a trend, I ignore the flyers. I really do. I don't look at the other stuff. I don't think a lot of people do.
The struggle with utility bills is anyone that rents won't get it, unless they
Yeah.
sign up as a duplicate billing, so you're missing a huge, call court, you're missing a huge number of people, so.
And if council's okay with that expense, I mean, to me, it's worth it to do everything that we can to, you know.
Do you expect that we'll find more information than what we've heard in the last 2 weeks?
I just want to just feel like we did everything that we could to get as much public input before council has to make this decision. One last time, you know, and then, that's just my opinion. Because we need to tweak these ordinances now, because we're looking at, we'll tweak them, fine tune them, and we'll know exactly what that public hearing will be about.
Well, can we figure out how to separate the ones, because,
Easily done. Yeah.
okay, good.
It needs to be separated.
well, one, I thought we had originally different ordinances that we brought forward. So what we're seeing here is basically a
It's clump.
yeah, of what we stepped it down, wrapped it back in a big clump, and it's like, I really like to see this broken back out to the ordinances that we move forward to their consideration. The other thing is, I don't know, honestly, whether, I know what you're asking, I know what you're doing, and I know why you're doing it, you know, but I don't know if we're gonna see much difference. So, having said that, doesn't mean that I'm not in support of trying to get, but it's gotta be the last time, you know.
Well, that's
Enough is
one
enough.
last.
We've, unless we're just gonna go out and start dragging them out their doors, you know, I mean, I don't know what else, how we can go out and personally survey them, you know, because I don't know, you know, whether it's gonna make any difference to them, honestly, because unless we're gonna move to Auburn, doesn't seem like anything else is gonna get them out of their houses. But I do think, we need to take consideration, what the recommendation has been by the city attorney, and irrelevant of what the planning commission has made recommendation in the medical marijuana issue. And I do think we need to look at, the zoning issues, which they should have been done in the first place.
Yeah, on the medical marijuana issue in particular, somewhat at a loss on the planning commission recommendation, because the basis for that one seemed the clearest to me, that the entire regulatory framework of the initiative was, or of the initial legislation was struck down. And, that was the clearest recommendation from the attorney to prohibit it. And the planning commission forwarded it back to us with a recommendation not to approve it. And I have not been able to find any findings that contradict the basis for the ordinance or that propose an alternative. They just say, don't do it. And I don't think we can just leave it alone. I think we either need to pass an ordinance prohibiting it or pass an ordinance that provides adequate regulation of it, not simply leave it floating.
I mean, taking into consideration what we just recently passed in relationship to the planning commission's responsibilities and roles, and you take that into light of what they brought back to us, just outside the scope. Their scope is to deal with the zoning and issues related to land use. That's what we just passed recently, to say, to limit, this is where your scope is. Nothing that I'm seeing here falls within that realm, other than the one-liners saying, production processing is in light industrial and sales is in commercial. That's probably the closest thing to their role that I see here.
Further council discussion? So what's our strategy?
Well, and I guess that's what I was trying to find out, like, kind of figure out what you guys are looking at, what you want to see brought forward. Maybe at the next workshop, we break down the two, look at the ordinances, look at how they're worded, coming from the attorney, council input, if you want to go about that route, and then do two more, or do you want to do them all on one night, go through and tweak each one of them and decide what you want to move forward? Just put these two out, put the ordinances, look at them, have discussion on them, decide what you want to move forward for a public hearing. I'm asking for direction on what to do with that.
Well, so far, the only thing that we wanted to separate was the processing and retail. The ban on medical, I don't think any of us has questioned that at all.
My suggestion, Leanne asked me earlier, my suggestion was that we go to our attorney and we also go to our insurance company and get some legal opinion that just what should we do from here? Should we have another public hearing? Should we just pass an ordinance? What should be our next step? Because I don't want to leave any gray area in this thing. I want to make sure that we got all of our bases covered legally and everything. Because believe me, whatever we do, we're going to get backlash. I know the decision of the city of Fife probably help us a little bit, but we still make sure that we got everything covered.
And if I remember right, her answer outlined, I can't remember if it's documented, accurate or not. I'm looking through the pages of material that we have.
We had it all.
So on page 32, it has next steps. So planning commission holds public hearing on or before something, notice is provided of the city council's public hearing on the continued maintenance of the interim zoning ordinance, which we still have to do, right? That hasn't been scheduled yet?
Mm-hmm.
All right. On or before 9/15, city council holds a public hearing on the continued maintenance of the interim zoning ordinance. So it lays out a couple things that we need to do, but I think an additional public comment is not going to hurt anything as long as we maintain our.
So squeeze it in here?
Yeah.
Well, and next Monday, we're having a public hearing on the interim moratorium.
I couldn't remember when it was.
This Monday.
I think it is reasonable to, the hearing, our action that night may be only looking at continuation of the interim zoning ordinance. Certainly, I think it's within scope to discuss replacing it with a permanent
community schedule.
That's not posted that way. That's not how it's been advertised. And so it's only advertised as the moratorium, interim moratorium.
And our ordinance wouldn't do anything.
No. Yes. She said only discuss the moratorium, do not take any other comment. I mean, you can't, but it's not the comment for that.
And I'm fine with breaking these up and discussing them over a certain period of time, but I would like, my original motion was to ban recreational sale for predetermined or a determined amount of time the planning commission is gonna bring back, so a year, 18 months, or whatever. And that ordinance was never drafted. So, I don't know if we can find one from somewhere else and modify it, but I'd like to see something in writing and have something for discussion.
Was it retail, not processing?
No. Well, at the time it was for all of it, but we can, if we're gonna break it up, we can
Break it.
put all three of them in there and just start if we want to, but, break them apart.
Individually, I just think that's best.
Would it be,
Well,
we just
wait,
broke
no.
it apart though?
I'm kind of confused on what
Me
you
too.
mean.
So if you're gonna break out,
The top one, break
The
those
top
two
one.
apart.
yes, break those two apart.
Okay.
But my original motion was for a ban for a determined amount of time, and that ordinance was never drafted.
Okay.
So I'd like to see something drafted.
And I guess I want to be clear, so that when I give directions to our city attorney to draft this ordinance regarding banning medical, processing, and retail.
Well, medical can stand alone. I think medical's fine on its own.
Okay.
She already has that, then.
Yeah, I think the 502,
I just want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm directing.
And I'm confused, if we just have a vote, that determines whether we ban something or not.
Still need to have a
So the no vote, oh, I see. So
But-
that we can't come back and revisit it.
yeah, so
But that's for like an indefinite amount of time. I mean, do you want to ask for guidance on a time frame on that then?
I would like to see a timeline. I don't want to ban it permanently, but I don't want to keep doing these 6-month bans. I think we do it till we figure out what's going to work, and that the state's regulating it, and that, the things that are supposed to happen are actually happening.
So my question is, say we go ahead and we put this ban in place in it for a year. Now we're getting close to the year. What's the process that we take then? Do we go back to public hearings? Do we go back to looking at the ordinances again? I mean, what is your thought? What would happen after a year's time?
And then we look at what was happening in Tacoma and Seattle and Bellingham and the cities that they're processing and selling it using the process in I-502 and see crime rate increase, are there, complaints, look at holistically, is it working, is it not working, and we can tweak what we're doing here. Is it, maybe we need to put it only in industrial, or is it good in commercial?
So what's the difference though of just, if we bring the retail to a vote and we vote to not allow it, isn't that pretty much the same as a ban?
Well, the ordinances that are proposed here are allowing it. So if we just vote no
To not allow it?
to not allow it, it's permanent, we just don't allow it. So
Right.
we could revisit it in a year, but with passing the ordinance that I would propose would be banning it for a certain amount of time that gives us 18 months and maybe direct staff, at the 12-month mark, we start looking at what's happening in Seattle and Tacoma. It gives us a roadmap as to what we can do versus just flat out banning it.
So let me make sure I'm clear as to what we want to bring forward for the next workshop. You want to see A and B separated. You want to see the ordinance on the medical ban, and you want to see an ordinance that is a temporary ban on retail and processing. With the timeline.
So separating just A into two.
Into three.
One,
You've got production, processing, and retail.
I thought
Well,
you're
production
okay
and processing are one.
I thought you're okay with processing and production.
that's,
If you want to do three, that's fine. But you said earlier you wanted to do
Well, I mainly want to see retail all by itself. But, okay, so production and processing are the exact, they're one
Are they lumped together in licensing and?
Okay.
No, that was my question.
Yeah, that's my understanding of the way we had it in the future, and I'll ask that question when I, get back to Carol.
Well, to give each of them a fair shake.
My understanding is production and processing are under one.
Okay.
And the retail is another.
I firmly believe retail should be all of
So, Paula,
Yes,
is that correct?
yes.
production and processing are one unit.
Considered.
Yes. Okay.
Well, it's
Well,
already,
I'll ask our
for licensing purposes, and retail, has been by lottery, but we don't know, so far, no one's won the lottery here, but we are getting inquiries, and we don't know if people can move
There's one.
from one jurisdiction.
You don't know if
One?
people can move from one
I
jurisdiction?
thought there was one.
There was one who applied, but he ranked 34 with 17 slots.
Okay.
So unless everyone else failed whatever the last
Okay,
test
that
was.
was pretty.
But I do not know, they may change that and reopen it for all I know. So many things have, as you're all aware, have changed or been up in the air for so long. So we should at least consider it in the event that something does change again. I think that's a good.
Ordinance on the ban.
A good